All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher, joined by Brad Thomas. Thanks everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. Brad, good game last night. Probably better game than we anticipated. Certainly closer than the spread was predicting. What did you make of the game overall? What are your big takeaways?
Travis Kelce is absolutely unstoppable.
He's
When
good.
he's getting the ball, and for some reason the defense can't stop him. 4 touchdowns, only on 25 yards. That's super impressive.
Yeah, he was a monster. My boy Josh Jacobs as well cashed
Oh
that
yes.
receiving prop of 15 and a half, kind of sweat-free. The antithesis of my stupid Matt Ryan over 1.5 rushing yards, which is like the previous prop I gave out, one of the most painful sweats of all time. But Josh Jacobs did that easily. So we're going to jump into Chiefs-Bills, which is about as high leverage a game as you're ever going to get in week 6, not just for the AFC, but also for the MVP market, which we can touch on too. And then we're going to talk Defensive Player of the Year, and then we'll wrap up by going into our favorite win total over-unders in the NBA's Western Conference. Now, the Bills are 3-point favorites at Arrowhead, Brad, which I think coming into the season would have shocked people. It's not like the Chiefs have been bad. They're 4-1. They're coming off a win over a division rival, and then probably more importantly, a win over the Bucs in Tampa. This line doesn't make a great deal of sense to me. Does it make sense to you?
No, not really. It's interesting because from week to week, if I feel like we've seen a different Chiefs team. Like if you look at that Chiefs team who absolutely obliterated the Cardinals, compare them to the Chiefs team who played in that first half against the Raiders. Each week it's something different. But in Arrowhead, it's interesting. I don't want to lay 3 points for anybody in Arrowhead. Patrick Mahomes is a wizard. Even when you have him down, he knows how to come back. He's 12-9 in games where he's trailing by double digits, and this is including the playoffs. I like what the Bills are doing, but I just feel like this Chiefs team is more well-rounded because instead of just keying in on Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, you actually have a lot more to worry about. They throw a lot more at you, whether that's the mix-in of Jerick McKinnon or even Sky Moore out of the backfield. You have Mecole Hardman who's playing better, and Scantling, who now they're finally utilizing him the correct way, where instead of just having him run deep routes like he was doing for the Packers, he's actually running some comeback routes because you have to respect his speed. So for me, I don't want to lay more than 3, more than 2.5. If I got the early line, probably I would be on the Bills, but without that, I'm going to have to take the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think the way to think about this game is that home field advantage right now in the NFL is worth 1.5 points. So if this game was in Buffalo, the line right now is saying that the line would be Bills -6, which I don't think there is a person on the planet who would be laying 6 with the Bills, even at home against Patrick Mahomes. So I think that's one way to just think about it. I don't think it's going to close 3. I would think that it's going to close more like 2.5 or 2.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like there's a lot of thought, and there's been this thought ever since preseason that the Bills are just a juggernaut. That they're a team that, they can't go 17-0 anymore, but they were a team with the capability to, flirt with that type of record. And, a 15-2 record now is not out of the question. But at the same time, like this defense without Micah Hyde is not all world. And I think that the offense, which is probably a little bit closer to all world still, I mean, Josh Allen does throw it up for grabs. Like that is his sin. Like he is turnover prone. I just think that's always going to be part of his game. So I think the Bills are clearly the better team than Kansas City, but are they 4.5 points better neutral field? Like I don't think so. The Chiefs, I think, have enough in the bank in terms of what they've shown this season to suggest that this line should be shorter. But Brad, MVP market. Now, I don't really understand this one either because basically coming into week 5, Allen and Mahomes were more bunched together.
Yeah.
And now Allen has separated himself from Mahomes. He's clearly in front in terms of the odds. I would have thought that Mahomes should have shortened more this week than Allen because of his stat line with the 4 touchdowns and no picks. And then also he's just won a higher leverage game in the division against the Raiders as opposed to just beating the Steelers and a rookie quarterback as 14-point favorites. I know Allen's stat line was pretty good as well, topping 400 yards. But I would think it's just play on and that these guys should basically be what they were coming into the week, or even that Mahomes should have shortened a little bit more. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It's weird to see that Allen is getting so much love. If I think about this from a betting perspective, I'd feel like I'd have to take Patrick Mahomes. We know this is going to be a media award, and no one dominates the media like Patrick Mahomes, especially now. At the beginning of the season, they're saying the Chiefs weren't going to be any good because they lost Tyreek Hill. Yet a lot of people failed to remember that Patrick Mahomes is special. The things that he could do on the field with reading coverages is second to none in the NFL. Yeah, he loses the guy who can blow the top off the offense, but as I alluded to earlier, this offense has evolved. It's changed, and Patrick Mahomes is still running 100 miles per second. So I think they should be a little bit closer to even. And I even think even in the market race for the AFC, I think they should be a little bit more even. These two teams are a lot more even on paper, and the two quarterbacks are a lot more even on paper. If you're watching these guys play, I have to just take the better odds.
Yeah, I agree with that. Probably the one thing in Allen's favor is that the Chiefs as a team would have had their overall rating slightly downgraded just because they were 7.5-point favorites and they only beat the Raiders by 1 in a game that they easily could have lost. So I do think if it is close, like say that the Bills and the Chiefs finish with the same record, I would think that Mahomes has the edge just because he has the narrative of no longer having Tyreek Hill, having no superstar wide receiver, whereas the Bills are seen as this absolute juggernaut with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, and they were the anointed team. So I do think that if it is neck and neck, that Mahomes would probably get the edge, but the Bills are more likely to have the better record. They are the better team. But as far as week 6 games go, this has to be the highest leverage game ever in week 6 for an MVP market, because this is going to go a huge way to deciding, who gets the 1 seed and who gets the edge between Allen and Mahomes. Before we jump into Defensive Player of the Year, just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands this weekend by predicting what will happen in college football, on the NASCAR circuit, and in the Premier League. There's also $100,000 up for grabs by guessing the outcome between the Cowboys and the Eagles in our Sunday Night 7 contest. All right, let's jump into DPOY. A lot of movement in the market after a pretty eventful Sunday, in particular with Micah Parsons really separating himself. It was a very kind of TJ Watt 2021 performance from Micah, just banged up. He's got the groin tightness. Doesn't matter, still sacks Stafford, still gets the Hollywood play at the end as well to end the game. Now, it does feel that Micah has kind of been anointed. He's plus 115 right now to win DPOY on PointsBet, which is incredibly short. And then Nick Bosa follows plus 500. And then you get out to Aaron Donald, Max Crosby, Rashawn Gary at greater than 10 to 1. Are you all in on Micah, Brad, or is there someone else that you like in the market?
So I was on Michael Parsons preseason, and it's making me smile from ear to ear that he's living up to the expectations. I think my price was somewhere around 8 to 1, 9 to 1, which I'm more than okay with. I think if you're going to play this market, you can't play Micah Parsons. There's no way that I'm taking a future in the NFL at almost even money. When you think about all it takes, especially a defensive guy, is to miss 3 games due to injury. Nick Bosa, he makes a lot of sense, but he's also dealing with a groin injury. So I don't know his status for next week. Don't know his status for the following week. So I don't really want to dive into that. If I have to take a player, like if I'm not on Michael Parsons preseason, I'd probably look at Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald comes back for another year after tasting the championship, and now he's recorded 9 sacks for last game. He has a narrative to kind of usurp these guys if they're going to be hurt and miss time. But if you aren't confident in these guys missing time, I feel like you're just gambling instead of being strategic, because it's probably Micah Parsons to lose.
Yeah, I think it is Parsons to lose in the sense that, he just needs to stay healthy, he's on the path right now, and he just needs to not get knocked off the path by injuries or going, 3 weeks without a sack. He just did go 2 weeks without a sack before getting Stafford a couple of times. And then also, I think the big thing for Parsons is that the Cowboys, they banked all these wins with Cooper Rush, and now they're 4-1, which is really important for DPOY, because the past 15 winners of this award have all come from guys who are playing on teams with winning records. So that really factors into it. And that's why, I would be really interested in Max Crosby at plus 1,500 or Myles Garrett at plus 1,700. But I think both of those teams are really going to struggle to make the playoffs, particularly with their losses in week 5. So Rashawn Gary, who was my guy from preseason, he's plus 1,500. I just think that there's that Packers defense. There's just no aura around them. They just haven't been very good. So I do think that Parsons is the rightful favorite, but certainly Nick Bosa is the guy to watch, where if he's playing this week and he's healthy, then plus 500 is wrong to me, because he should be much shorter than that. If he misses 1 week, I think plus 500 is about right. And then if he misses multiple weeks, then he's probably done. But that's the thing, because Bosa has a very good chance to lead the league in sacks, and he's playing on the best defense in the NFL. And so I think that if Micah stays healthy, Bosa is probably the only guy who's going to beat him. And then if Micah, if he starts to feel his groin again, then it becomes just absolute chaos in the market, which despite your 8-9-1 ticket, Brad, I am kind of cheering for chaos, because chaos is when the bad prices tend to pop up. So there's a lot to look for in this market. I do want to give some love to Max Crosby, because I don't think people really talk about Max Crosby that much. We saw it last night. The guy's an absolute monster, and he's not just an incredible pass rusher. He's tied for the league in sacks at the moment, but also stopping the run. He's a beast as well. I think he had 3 tackles for loss in the run game. And I would say that there's a very good chance that on merit, that Max Crosby might be the most deserving candidate by the end of the season. Like, he's in the mix for that. I'd probably say he's the 3rd favorite to be the most deserving candidate behind Micah and Nick Bosa, but he's just not going to get the attention because he plays on the Raiders and he's just not as big of a name. But yeah, any interest in Max Crosby at plus 1,500 for you, Brad?
Not for me. The Raiders just aren't good enough. And then, players like that get overlooked when you think about overall production of the defense and disruptiveness. Like, he's such a disruptive player, but that defense from end to end is not as good as the 49ers, not as good as the Cowboys. So, you're only as good as the sum of your parts.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Max Crosby, the only way that he's going to win this award is if he breaks the sack record.
Yes.
That's the only way he gets into discussion. And to be fair, I think he's probably only like 20-1 fair price to do that because he is such a pressure and sack monster. Maybe he's a little bit longer than that, but I do think he has an outside path. But at the current price, I probably wouldn't get too involved. All right. Before we jump into some NBA Western Conference win totals, reminder that the basketball season is almost here, and you can get a jump start on your fantasy draft with the Roto World Fantasy Draft Guide. Get player profiles, expert rankings, mock drafts, and more. Use code HOOPS5 at checkout and get yours for just $5. Go to NBCSportsEdge.com/Edge Plus today. I just had a fantasy draft a couple of days ago. I drafted Jordan Poole and Draymond Green on the same team, so hoping that chemistry doesn't destroy my team. Now, NBA Western Conference, which includes those Golden State Warriors, but they're not on our list of favorite overs or unders today. Brad, the first team that you've got for an over is the Dallas Mavericks, which I like a lot. What's the reasoning?
Yeah, so when I was doing my handicapping, I wanted to see how much losing Jalen Brunson would hurt. How many games did I consider Jalen Brunson being worth for the Dallas Mavericks? And ultimately, it wasn't really about losing Jalen Brunson that kind of made me feel like I'm okay with this. It was the fact that the top teams, the Utah Jazz and the San Antonio Spurs, who accumulated enough wins to actually matter and impact the win total, they're going to be tanking. They're going to be much worse. Those are free wins. They had 52 wins last season, the Dallas Mavericks did. And one thing that I thought was really impressive about this Dallas Maverick teams and Luka Doncic was Luka expressed desire to be a better basketball player. And that's just not on the court, but off the court. Luka, we saw him, drinking a beer before a game. He still has that young mentality. Well, over this offseason, he spent a lot of time kind of adjusting his attitude, focusing on his game from a physicality standpoint, getting tougher when he needs to be. And man, they added Christian Wood. I can't wait to see these two play off each other. It's going to be fun. I think I have them about the 4 as a borderline 3 seed in the West. I'm really excited to watch this team. I'm going to put some money on Luka to win MVP. Just when you have another presence in the paint that they haven't had before, like a Christian Wood, it just makes you that much better. The man's already a walking triple-double now. Imagine what he can do with a guy who who he can actually do some pick and pops instead of just straight pick and rolls.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I like the Dallas over. I think that losing Jalen Brunson is more than offset by adding Christian Wood. Just in terms of their positional needs, it's probably not ideal. But I think that Christian Wood is better than Jalen Brunson, which is probably unpopular. But Christian Wood has a plus 3.7 estimated plus minus season banked when he was in Detroit. He's never played for a good team either. So there's this upside, I think, in Wood. There's also disaster potential because he's going to come off the bench. I don't think he really wants to, but I think that Christian Wood has the chance to be a really significant player, particularly in the regular season. He might get more exposed defensively in the playoffs, but regular season, I think he's going to be a monster. And I think that this Dallas team is a 50-win team. Now, not a 50-win team is the Utah Jazz, and you like them under 24.5.
Yeah, I did. And I think this number is kind of low. I'm just so ready for the Utah Jazz to just pack it in all season. They were kind of at their wits' end with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, where they were thinking, what are we going to do? How are we going to win a championship? We need something to get us over to that next level, get us over the hump. And they just couldn't do it. So they decided their best bet was to blow it up. Their projected starters this season, let me just tell you this starting lineup. First, I don't see how they're going to play any defense. Mike Conley, Colin Sexton, Malik Beasley, Lauri Markkanen, Kelly Olynyk. That's their projecting starting team. Like, this is a team who had a defensive player of the year in Rudy Gobert, now going to Kelly Olynyk as their five, their defensive presence. And in no world do I ever consider him a defensive presence. The Utah Jazz are making it very clear what their objective and what their main goal is going to be. They are going to lose games. That is it. They want to stockpile draft picks and get better for next season. I don't know why they wanted Colin Sexton. I don't know if they're going to ship off Mike Conley, but I think they should make some moves to acquire as much as they can for an aging Mike Conley. It's going to be something to see, watch. It's going to be probably the biggest downfall of a team. I can't imagine one that has dropped quicker. Maybe when LeBron James left the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's a win total that I'm afraid to play, but I just think that this is a 22-win team.
Yeah, you don't like Colin Sexton as the best guy on the NBA team? You don't like that setup?
No.
I think that, look, if they keep this roster intact, they will go over 24.5 because there's a lot of confidence, but they're not going to keep the roster intact. Like, these guys, Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson and Mark, and not all of them are going to end the season on the team. Like, Danny Ainge has shown he's very aggressive. And I would think that, they're going to end up with a roster that by February is completely different to this roster. You just need to avoid, a start of competence, but I don't think they're really going to get there either. So I'm with you on the under on Utah, just because the bottom is going to fall out. Now, you mentioned Rudy Gobert, Brad. And Rudy Gobert, he's going to feature on some jerseys that I purchased this year because I'm all in on the Timberwolves. I'm all in over 48.5. This is too small. This is a 50-plus win team easily for mine with health. And I think that Rudy Gobert is going to flirt with Defensive Player of the Year. I think that is right now. He's not even going to flirt with it. He's going to take it home. Defensive Player of the Year, the market right now, I think is just completely wrong. Gobert is out there around plus 400. I make him even money to win this award with Robert Williams being out, with Jaren Jackson being out. I think that he is the clear favorite in the field, and I think that he's going to lift this defense to being a top 5 unit. And then offensively, it might be a little awkward with Gobert and Towns next to each other, but having Karl Towns, having Anthony Edwards, having D'Angelo Russell for all his sins, there's too much offensive talent for this not to be an above-average offense. And I just think it all adds up to a team that's going to potentially mess with getting the 1 seed in the West. Because the other thing to think about with win totals that are this high is, what's the incentive in the organization? Is this team obsessed with winning regular season games? I think there's no team in the NBA that wants to rack up regular season wins more than the Timberwolves this year because they sold their future for Gobert. And there's people whose jobs are going to depend on this being a really good season. And so I think they're going to be all in to get regular season wins. I think that Gobert is going to win Defensive Player of the Year because he's the most deserving candidate every single year. And it's just a matter of whether voters want to reward the narrative. Now he's got all the narrative in the world. He's going to fix Karl Towns defensively. He's on a new team. He's got a new haircut. Everything is cooking for Gobert. Love him for DPOY. And I think that the Wolves will go over. Are you with me on the Wolves, Brad?
Yeah, actually, this was my plan B of what I was going to send over for today. And it's so exciting because not only are they getting Rudy Gobert, but they're all getting more mature. You see it even as the bridge from last season to this season where they had the disappointment. Karl Towns, more mature. Anthony Edwards, more mature. D'Angelo Russell, more mature. These guys are growing up in the NBA. Now they have an ability to do a Twin Towers look, which is unlike probably any Twin Towers we've seen, if I'm remembering correctly, because of the ability to stretch the floor. If you have a Karl-Anthony Towns with an ability to run a pick and roll with Rudy Gobert, it's going to be a very versatile offense. It's going to be a good defense. Now, this is going to be hard to drive in on. This is going to be one of the longest defenses in terms of your center, your 4 and your 5. I'm really, really high on the Timberwolves this year. Just keep them healthy because we're watching a lot of good basketball.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that people are worried, like, defensively about Towns playing next to Gobert. It's like, no, that's a good thing. Like, size in the regular season, that just shows up in so many hidden spots defensively. Like, look at what Jared Allen and Evan Mobley did as Twin Towers in Cleveland, leading them to what for a time was a top 4 defense. And also think about, like, Gobert on the Jazz last year. When he was on the floor, the Jazz had the best defense in the NBA, and that was him playing alongside Donovan Mitchell, Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, Bojan Bogdanovic as the 4. Like, he had a terrible defensive supporting cast, but he's just so good regular season defensively that they were still at a league best level. And now he gets guys like Jaden McDaniels, like Anthony Edwards, like the size of Towns. Like, I just think that they're going to be an absolute monster. And also, they had I think for the last 30 games last season, they had the best offense in the league. So I think that this team has an immense amount of upside. Now, a team, my favorite under in the West, a team that fully realized their upside last year, I think there's only downside to come, is the Phoenix Suns, who I'm taking under 52.5 wins. And look, they won 64 games last year. So this is a steep fall. But at the same time, like, they were lucky to get that record by point differential. They were more a 58-59 win team. They were historically excellent in the clutch. Just incredible shooting numbers, particularly from mid-range. And look, an element of that is when you have Chris Paul on your team, you are a lock to be really good in the clutch because he is that good when it comes to crunch time. But at the same time, it was still fluky. I think that losing Jay Crowder, who is, by all accounts, is not going to be on the team. I don't think they're going to get that much back for him, but he is a valuable part. They were relatively healthy last year. Paul and Booker did miss time, but, they both played 65-plus games. Mikal Bridges played all 82 famously. I think that just Chris Paul is at the age where any year he could just fall off a cliff. And, I think it's not going to be the steepest fall, but at the same time, you can't count on what he did last year. The DeAndre Ayton situation, like, who knows there? That's a huge range of outcomes. I think that Ayton, it could just be a disaster. I also like him at 50-1 to win most improved player. I just think there's a huge range of outcomes for Ayton. And just overall, I just think the West, the Clippers are going to be better. The Wolves are going to be better. I think the Mavericks are going to be better. The Lakers, the Blazers, the Kings. Like, I just think that the Pelicans, I think the only 2 teams who have really fallen off are Utah and San Antonio. I just think it's going to be harder night to night. And there's just a lot of bad mojo around the Suns. And it's difficult to price the power of mojo into a win total, but at the same time, there's nothing you really like there. Are you with me on the Suns under 52.5, Brad?
I flirted with this line, and the only way I think you could play this is the under. I watch a lot of West Coast basketball, being a huge Paul George and Kawhi Leonard fan, so I'm up all the time watching this on my NBA League Pass. And one thing I could say about this Phoenix Suns team, if you watch them and you don't scoreboard watch, you just watch them play from start to finish, one thing that you'd probably ask yourself is this team winning? And why I say that is because they lack the physicality, the toughness of a true championship caliber team, and losing Crowder is going to hurt even more because he is the backbone of physicality in the NBA. That's why teams want him. Yeah, sure, he'll make two threes per game. No, but they want him to be nasty, mean, tough, bring that kind of attitude to the games. And I don't see that in anyone, even in the guy who should have won Defensive Player of the Year in Bridges. He's not even mean and nasty. He's just a really efficient defender. And those matter. How you play games, especially when your back's up against the wall. If you're not going to outshoot your opponent, you got to out-toughness them. And I don't think they're going to be as electric as they were in some of these games when they were erasing like 15-point deficits. They'd come out and they score like 35 to 37 points in the third quarter, and then all of a sudden they're up by 4 or 5 and just run away with it in the fourth quarter. Shooting like that, efficiency like that is very hard to replicate year over year unless they figure out how to get their stuff together and be a cohesive, tough unit. I don't see them winning the West. I don't see them being the 2 seed in the West. I actually have them 3 as my borderline 2 team.
Yeah, you hurt my feelings there, Brad, with that Mikal Bridges DPOY throwaway comment. We're a Marcus Smart family. After I hit on him at 200 to 1 to win DPOY, Marcus Smart, my hero, my best friend, the godfather to my 3 daughters. We love Marcus Smart on this show. Good luck, Mikal Bridges, this year.
Yes.
Yeah, if he takes down my boy Rudy Gobert. It's funny, all of last season, I was just cheering against Rudy Gobert. Every single game the last month of the year, trying to start home. And now this year, I'm all in on Gobert. So it flips. There are no allegiances in the betting game. Just who you bet on in that moment. All right. I agree with everything you said about Phoenix. I think the mid-range shooting, yes, you have Booker and Paul, so it's not totally unsustainable, but I think it was unsustainable at the levels last season. So I think there's a lot of downside for the Phoenix Suns. All right. We're done, Brad. Thanks everyone who watched on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. Sorry, Marcus Smart, if you're watching about Brad's comment earlier, he doesn't speak for both of us. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. From Jay Croucher and Brad Thomas, we'll be back tomorrow.